suggest that the moon's influence on rainfall is more likely to be caused by the lunar tides in the Earth's atmosphere. Conclusion: the Cloud and Rain Physics Group, under Bowen's leadership, worked in a most stimulating environment. Even his more speculative ideas sometimes drove his critics to discover truths that would otherwise have remained hidden. Over 24 years, the group established a high international reputation with its achievements and an impressive number of sound scientific publications. Now, the CSIRO have obviously studied this and been doing it for so long, but what are the consequences? As I mentioned earlier, and was sort of touched on in that CSIRO article, was that some people can be flooded, some people can have drought, depending on how you manipulate the weather. And in this article from the Telegraph in the UK, dated the 21st of May 2011, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says Europe stealing Iran's rain. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has accused Western countries of plotting to cause drought in Iran by using high-tech equipment to drain the clouds of raindrops. As I mentioned, they can manipulate the weather so some people experience drought while others experience floods, or be it just normal rainfall, but consistently, rather than a normal cycle of droughts and floods, or rain and dry weather. So I'll just read you this article. It's a short article, and then we'll go into another song before the last segment. Moments after the Iranian president made the startling claim at the inauguration of a dam in a central province, it started to rain. Western countries have designed plans to cause drought in certain areas of the world, including Iran, Mr. Ahmadinejad said in the city of Arak in the Markazi province. According to reports on climate, whose accuracy has been verified, European countries are using special equipment to force clouds to dump their water on their continent, he said. By doing so, they prevent rain clouds from reaching regional countries, including Iran, Mr. Ahmadinejad charged. Iran has experienced several droughts in recent years. Mr. Ahmadinejad also recalled an article by a Western politician, whom he did not identify, in which droughts in some regions spanning from Turkey and Iran to the east of Asia are predicted for the next 30 years. The regions referred to in the article include countries whose culture and civilization frighten the West, Mr. Ahmadinejad said in a report in support of his argument. Iranian leaders claim on a daily basis that Western countries, led by arch-foe United States, devise plots to undermine the Islamic Republic and to impede its economic and scientific development. They also accuse world powers of colluding against Iran's national unity, independence, political establishment, culture, as well as international relations. Mr. Ahmadinejad is involved in an unprecedented power struggle with the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He recently refused to obey orders handed down by Ayatollah Khamenei less than 2 years after the pair formed a powerful political alliance to defeat anti-regime protests that swept the country. So that's an interesting article which I'll attach to the posts of this episode. And Iran, I'm not sure is aware, but other Middle Eastern countries have been manipulating the weather nearby, which I'll also post links to. But right now I'd like to go to another song. This is by Milkk, spelled Milkk. Welcome back to Should We Talk About the Weather? This is episode 2 on Tuesday the 14th of June 2016. Today we're talking about cloud seeding and weather modification, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about weather derivatives and basically betting on the weather. I'm going to read to you now from Wikipedia. This is the article on weather derivative. Weather derivatives are financial instruments that can be used by organizations or individuals as part of a risk management strategy to reduce risk associated with adverse or unexpected weather conditions. The difference from other derivatives is that the underlying asset, rain, temperature, or snow, has no direct value to the price the weather derivative. Overview of uses. Farmers can use weather derivatives to hedge against poor harvests caused by failing rains during the growing period, excessive rain during harvesting, high winds in case of plantations or temperature variabilities in case of greenhouse crops. Theme parks may want to insure against rainy weekends against peak summer seasons, and gas and power companies may use heating degree days or cooling degree days contracts to smooth earnings. A sports event managing company may wish to hedge the loss by entering into a weather derivative contract because if it rains the day of the sporting event, fewer tickets will be sold. And also I'd like to add there that music events such as Paul McCartney, when he played, I think it was in Russia back in the early 90s, invested in cloud seeding to make sure that his concert went ahead. And the Beijing Olympics, that was another big one that when those Olympics were on, I think it was 2008, they heavily modified the weather and to make sure that their event went ahead. Anyway, carrying on. Heating degree days are one of the most common index types for weather derivative evaluation. Typical terms for a HDD contract could be, for the November to March period, for each day when the daily mean temperature falls below a reference point, 65 degrees Fahrenheit in the US, or 18 degrees Celsius outside the US, a cumulative count is kept of the daily temperatures from the reference temperature. Such an accumulation can be the basis for a derivative contract which might be structured as an option, call or put, or as a swap, that is the agreement to pay or to receive the payment. History. The first weather derivative deal was in July 1996 when Aquila Energy structured a dual commodity hedge for Consolidated Edison. The transaction involved Con Ed's purchase of electric power from Aquila for the month of August. The price of power was agreed, and a weather clause was embedded into the contract. This clause stipulated that Aquila would pay Con Ed a rebate if August turned out to be cooler than expected. The measurement of this was referenced to a cooling degree days measured at New York City's Central Park weather station. If total CDDs were from 0 to 10% below the expected 320, the company received no discount to the power price. But if total CDDs were 11 to 20% below normal, Con Ed would receive a $16,000 discount. Other discounted levels were worked in for even greater departures from normal. Weather derivatives slowly began trading over the counter in 1997. As the market for these products grew, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange introduced the first exchange-traded weather futures contracts and corresponding options in 1999. The CME currently lists weather derivative contracts for 25 cities in the United States, 11 in Europe, 6 in Canada, 3 in Australia, and 3 in Japan. Most of these financial instruments track cooling degree days or heating degree days, but other products track snowfall and rainfall at 10 separate US locations. The CME Hurricane Index an innovation developed by the reinsurance company, provides contracts that are based on a formula derived from the wind speed and radius of named storms at the point of US landfall. A major early pioneer in weather derivatives was Enron Corporation. Isn't that interesting? Through its Enron Online unit. In an Opalesque video interview, Nephalia Capital's Barney Shawwell described how some hedge funds treat weather derivatives as an investment class. Counterparties such as utilities, farming conglomerates, individual companies, and insurance companies are essentially looking to hedge their exposure through weather derivatives, and funds have become a sophisticated partner in providing this protection. There has also been a shift over the last few years from primary fund of funds investment in weather risk to more direct investments for investors looking for non-correlated items for their portfolio. Weather derivatives provide pure non-correlated alternative to traditional financial markets. And it goes on to explain the different types of valuation, which I'll let you read for yourself. So as you could imagine, it's in people's interest if they can hedge on the weather, bet on the weather, that they would want to make money off a result that they're expecting. So wouldn't they then invest in modifying the weather to make sure that they come out on top? Or perhaps make crops fail so that, say, a farmer who has an organic farm and Monsanto would like to further their GMO crops, they could make that